Hello and welcome to the Learning to Slay the Beast podcast, a resilience podcast where we talk about all the challenging things that we're working to overcome, like anxiety, health, and relationship issues. My name is Sarah. Hello and welcome to the wrap-up episode for 2023. I'm so happy to connect with you this week and to spend some time at the end of the year. You know, I wasn't going to do a wrap-up episode or a best of. In previous years, I've done best of episodes that really are snippets of every episode that we've done and spent some time reflecting on the year. And this year, it's been so busy. It's been an absolute lot. And I just didn't have it in me. I didn't have it in me to do all of that editing and spend all of the time splicing the clips. And so I've been listening to my favorite podcasts. I listened to the Armchair Expert Best Of, and My Bialik's Breakdown has a Best Of, and I started to feel really guilty because I did have some amazing episodes this year and episodes that I definitely wanted to share about again and kind of recap, but just not having the time to really devote to pulling all of the clips, because what it really takes is for me to re-listen to all the episodes, write down the times of the clips that I want to pull, go in, copy and paste them all into a new episode, introduce them. It's a lot. It's a lot to do the best of episodes when you don't have, a sound editor or something, somebody like that who's going to be able to pull those together for you. So I thought what I would do is have a little bit of a reflection on the year, pulling some of the stats and talking about some of the big shows that we did. Of course, this year, I had a few breaks in recording. Mostly, health issues that I had. I talked openly on the podcast about we had a flood in our basement. I talked about having shingles and then just really hitting kind of like a burnout season for myself in the summertime and realizing, okay, what can I do to make things more manageable? And one of those was to record the podcast in a batch that was really done late summer, early fall, and then post every 2 weeks instead of every week. And so I will say it's been something I'm experimenting with. I don't love the every 2 weeks. I prefer to do it every week. I get to really connect with more people that way. I get to make them more timely and talk about things that are really, current and happening and all of that stuff. But for my own mental health, this was a change that I made this year. And I think we're going to see where it goes next year. I'm spending some time over the holiday season, planning to spend some time in reflection on where should the podcast go? What is the future for the podcast? And certainly the timing piece will be one. The other piece that I've been struggling with in the latter part of the year is recording sound. So in the basement that I recorded in before we had the flood, things sounded a lot better. And I've been really struggling with the recording sound in the new space and how to make that better. So that's something that I'll be working on as well. And those are, I guess, maybe some of the negatives of the year, I suppose. It was a tough year. A lot of people are like, oh, I can't wait to say goodbye to 2023. And it feels kind of sad to say that. And it feels really reminiscent of some of the pandemic years to kind of say, oh, I can't wait, to say goodbye to this. But at the same time, I know that there are hard things. There are hard things that happened this year for myself. There were hard things that happened to others. And it is sometimes the real sentiment of, okay, I think as a whole, I'm ready for something new. And of course, that's what we'll experience in 2024 is that freshness of the new year and getting to have some thoughts about how we want to approach that. And for me, still working on my health. I've had some great things on the health side though, too. I've been working with a new osteopath and going quite regularly. And I'm really feeling a lot less pain in my body. It's allowed me to be able to run farther. I was getting to the point where I dreaded running because I would end up with so much back pain from it. And it's odd pain. It's kind of like mid back around my ribs because I've had kind of like a rib problem ever since my son was born, or since the pregnancy with my son. So like 14 years ago. And it's just kind of gotten really bad over the last year or two, and I've been struggling. Spinning is not bad, but like running would be one that, like, when it's kind of feeling out of whack, it's hard. It's really hard to like take that impact and keep working through it. So I've been working with an osteopath, and it's been making a huge difference in terms of being able to get, I can run 5K now. Like I'm back, not fast. I'm slow. I've always prided myself on being more of a jogger than a runner, but I love being able to do it. And I love how great I feel when I do it. And so now I'm finally back there. And that took, the last 6 months, really, since shingles, all of that. I couldn't run at all. I was in a lot of pain, and I kind of just took a break for my body, and then have decided to really take it seriously in terms of reworking things. It wasn't just the shingles. I had a lot of pain happening in my low back and then ribs area that, I worked with a chiropractor, I was working with massage therapy, like all the things to try to get this loose. And it just seemed like every time, every week, or like it would just really get bad again. So I'm finally at a place where it's starting to feel bearable and better. And I'm like feeling better more than I am feeling hurt. So that's been really positive this year. Of course, yeah, the shingles and the basement was a really tough time, a really tough cluster there. And, there have been other things going on too, just within the family, health issues and things like that. And so, it can be really, really challenging as mom to work through those. But we're doing our best, and we're getting there. So that's kind of all that we can do, is just keep moving forward and keep going into the best direction that we can find. So looking for the best people to work with, all of that stuff. So those are some of the big things, I guess, on my end, is really working with my body. And then the other thing was, when I went through all that pain as well, I had really eased up on the weightlifting, and now again I'm feeling like I'm kind of back. I started to go even to a weekly group fitness class that happens at 7:45 on Saturday mornings at a gym that's not far away. It's not like a fitness gym, it's like a gym at a campus. And so a woman does a class in there. And again, I hadn't been able to do anything like that in quite a while. So it's felt really fun to kind of be like, I'm out, I'm working out, I can keep up. They do like Tabata and HIIT style workouts and workouts with light weights, and all that stuff. And I'm feeling like kind of like my old self, like, I can do it, a little more confidence that I can do it. Where before I was really starting to tell myself, like, I can't do this stuff anymore. It's too painful. And it's amazing what you can do when you do, start to meet those right practitioners who can open things up again. So really excited about that. In terms of the podcast, so kind of looking at some of the stats, this year I had about 3,000 downloads, which is still pretty incredible given that I was posting much less frequently. Like, I did not post as many episodes at all. I took several breaks. Like, I took a whole break in the summer and kind of post the flood time. And so, it's amazing to me that I still had that many downloads for not only the new episodes, but also the previous episodes, right? So those are going to be incorporated as well in terms of those downloads, because it's historic for all of the episodes. But really cool from tons of countries. United States is kind of my biggest share, but Canada also pretty high up there. And then we see like UK, Costa Rica, Australia, Singapore, Sweden, Norway, Mexico, Germany, Turkey, France, Ireland, Iran, New Zealand, Portugal, South Africa, Croatia. It goes on and on. It's amazing. To see, like, even if people have only downloaded like one episode, like somehow they stumbled upon this podcast and, we're looking at something in particular that caught their eye. So always exciting to see that. And it gets you really thinking about, wow, okay, what can I do to appeal to that? Most people are downloading on Apple Podcasts. Spotify is also really up there. Google Chrome has a decent share, and Safari. So some people are listening kind of on their web. And then I thought it would be fun to just go over the top 10 episodes for the year. So our highest ranking episode this year, which is really exciting, was episode 146, Shining a Light on Pandas Pans, where I talked to Kira Dugan, and she and I connected through the podcast, and I was able to interview her, and it was just such an amazing episode. Really, really happy to get to talk to her. She listens to the podcast, so it's so fun that she had the most downloaded podcast episode this year. And honestly, she did a lot to promote that episode. So I'm not surprised, because she's been amazing to connect with and had so many wonderful ideas. It was a special episode for me too, because the first time I got to actually interview somebody that was talking openly about their pandas diagnosis and getting to talk from a firsthand experience. So I think that was really great. And if you haven't checked it out, it's episode 146, Shining a Light on Pandas. And thank you so much to Kira for being part of the podcast. Like I said, it was really, really special to be able to connect with her this week, and a great conversation if you do know somebody that has pandas, or if you are looking for more information, please consider checking out that episode. So in a similar light, the next most downloaded episode was episode 133, Demystifying Pandas with Dr. Nancy O'Hara. So this was at the very beginning part of the year. I was so lucky to be able to connect with Dr. Nancy O'Hara. She has been promoting, at that point, had been promoting her new book, Demystifying Pandas. And it was just a dream, really, to be able to interview her during that time. And I really enjoyed that episode myself. I learned a ton from her. I have her book as well. And it's just been something that I was really thrilled to get her onto the podcast and be able to pick her brain about some of the really challenging pieces of pandas. The next most listened to episode on the podcast was episode 141. And 141 was Codependency, People-Pleasing, and Healing After Divorce with Karen McMahon. Karen, I had interviewed previously on the podcast on episode 105, How to Journey Beyond Divorce with Karen McMahon. And so she was the first return guest that I had. So that was really special and thrilling to kind of be like, oh, I'm coming full circle and talking to somebody that I've interviewed already, and we're getting to reconnect. And she's amazing, has so many good tips around especially divorce, but not even just divorce. Like, we talked about boundaries, we talked about working with children of divorce, and how things all come together in this space around codependency and people pleasing, and whether you are a child of divorce or maybe you are in a divorce situation right now. Really great episode to connect with, because there's just so much. And also, if you are working through divorce, of course, the episode that I did with her initially, of course, How to Journey Beyond Divorce is an amazing resource as well if you are interested in that. So another episode that did really well. So this is looking a little out of 2023, but it had a lot of downloads this year still, was Treating Pandas, Pans, and Lyme with Dr. Roseanne Kapana-Hodge. And that was episode number 59. And so for whatever reason, I do think a lot of people are looking into episodes around pandas, pans, and Lyme. And that one did really well this year. And that was a great conversation as well. Dr. Roseanne is wonderful. I can't speak highly, or can't not speak highly enough about her. She just really has a way of speaking with people and is so personable that I really enjoyed meeting her when I did. And then the next most downloaded episode was episode 148, Pandas Perspectives with Zach Oates. So again, this one was published this year in the fall on Pandas Pans Awareness Day, and I was so fortunate to connect with Zach Oates, who talked with us again about his experience with Pans Pandas. So what an amazing year to get to speak to Dr. Nancy O'Hara, Kira Dugan, and then Zach Oates, and both the last two were talking specifically about their own experience with Pans Pandas. And it was just such an honor for both of them to be willing to share with me and talk about what these disorders are like in real time and how challenging it can be. And it just honestly, part of me gets so frustrated because I just don't understand why it is so hard to find medical providers. It's just the story that I hear over and over again, be it from parents, be it from, in this case, young adults who have experienced also the challenges to finding care for Pans Pandas. And just it makes me really want to work as best I can to try to open up some of those doors. And then also for my children, like trying to make those connections and look into how we can be able to treat these disorders in a better fashion, because it just seems like it is so challenging across the board. And again, I really appreciated him being able to share those perspectives and then, opening up about some of the tools that he uses. And I think that is so great. If you do, again, know anybody, you can kind of look at those and then talk to your providers about, okay, maybe some of these tools would work for us. So the next episode in this top 10 is episode 137, which is How to Overcome Parental Alienation with Lisa Goodpaster. So this was early this year that I posted, and it was quite an interesting conversation. Parental alienation is something I had never heard of. Totally different term for me, but really hit home in terms of speaking with Lisa and understanding what that is, what it means to be really kind of like cut off from your parents emotionally, and some of the implications that she's went through and now what she's doing to kind of work through those and get out this term and what these issues are to others. So that episode did really well in terms of downloads, and that's awesome because it means more people are learning like I did, and starting to understand what parental alienation is, and then what can be done and who you could reach out to and things like that. So another episode that did really well this year Again, Pandas Pans related was Pandas Pans Fundamentals with Dr. Scott and Ellen Antoine, episode number 50. That episode is the first one that I did interviewing any doctor or expert related to Pans Pandas. It was kind of a real kickoff. I had talked about Pans and Pandas on the podcast, but never reached out to a professional or a parent or a young person and spoken with them. So I remember that episode so well, and I remember being so excited and also nervous because I was like, oh my gosh, these doctors are going to give me their time. They're going to speak to me about Pandas Pans. I'm going to be able to ask them questions and learn more. And so it was just such an honor, and that episode continues to do well. I think a few reasons, people are really interested. People are looking around for things on Pandas Pans. And then also, if they are considering working with a doctor, that's kind of the other piece that I'm trying to provide. They can find out and listen to these doctors speak. And I know that's been similar with Dr. Jennifer Barr as well, or Dr. Jennifer Bear, in terms of people have listened to that podcast just to try to understand her a little bit more, the podcast that I did with her. Now, I know she has her own this year, and it's super great. I highly recommend that podcast as well. The next one was actually recorded this year, and it was How to Thrive in Tough Situations with Gladys Camachow. And that, again, was such a great recording. I really enjoyed my conversation with her. I felt, she's one of those people I could have spoken to all day. It's kind of a more generic name, but yeah, we really dug into tough things that she's encountered in her life and really what she's done to overcome that and to find peace ultimately in her life. And I thought she had really some great perspective in terms of what she was sharing and some of her tools and techniques. And then the next one on the list, which is funny, is episode 138, How Do I Have High Cholesterol? And so that was just a personal episode. So I'm actually really surprised to see that it did so well. But again, people are probably looking for podcasts on high cholesterol and then came across this one. And for me, I was reflecting in the episode because I was just blown away that my naturopath had, run the numbers around my cholesterol and then found that, she wanted me to reduce these things. And, I'm pretty diligent when it comes to that kind of stuff. And so I was like working through how to look at my diet differently, but yet I don't eat a lot of meat. And I just felt like it just didn't really jive. And so it's interesting as a follow-up to that episode. So that was episode 138. I did go to see my general practitioner a little while after I kind of worked through the diagnosis with the naturopath. And it was really interesting because he worked through the numbers and he has this calculator type thing around cholesterol. And what he showed me was that the numbers that I had, when you kind of put them together, he was like, I really don't think this is concerning. He said, looking at it, the fact that I'm not diabetic, the fact that I'm active, like there were all these things that he was looking at. And then he said he really didn't see there being an issue with me ever in terms of high cholesterol. So it was kind of the exact opposite. And I know that naturopaths are focused on more preventative care. So I do understand that, but I was just so panicked that it was nice to hear that he really said like, it's a very low percentage still that I would ever have high cholesterol. And he's like, and then it's showing that percentage wouldn't go up until I'm in my 80s, which he said even then it was still really low. So, it was good to kind of have that second opinion. And so I've been able to kind of take a little bit of both and be like, okay, this is something that I should watch and be aware of, but I don't need to be in like full damage control mode because often my brain goes from like 0 to 100. Like if I think something's a problem, I'm like, oh my God, like all over it. I've got to fix this. And so it was a way for me to kind of bring that down a little bit, because honestly, I didn't really have the capacity to be making those changes at a super high level. And definitely didn't feel great about being so panicked. And so the last episode that ranked highly this year is How to Break Up Like a Badass, episode number 134. And that episode was kind of rounding out our top 10, and it was recorded with Tal Yardini. And that was a great conversation. Loved the name, Break Up Like a Badass. She was a real pleasure to speak to. We had a lot of fun talking about recovery and breakup recovery, and her whole story about going from a New York City singer, actress, to a breakup recovery coach, and being really focused on how to help people through that. And she's got this program, Break Up Like a Badass formula. And so really neat and something totally different, not the typical conversation that I have on the Learning to Slay the Beast podcast. So it was a real pleasure to speak with Tal as well. So that's kind of it in terms of the stats. Those, like I said, those are the top 10 that, interestingly, quite a few of them are from this year, but some of them were older. Some of them were the older podcasts as well. And that's awesome. I'm always happy when there's something from the back catalog that people stumble across and still identify with, obviously, and feel is relevant. And if I'm honest, I still go back to some older episodes, because sometimes I go through something in my life and I think, you know what? I interviewed somebody on this a year ago, and I'm going to go listen to it because now it's relevant to me. Maybe at the time it was something that was just a conversation, and they gave, some hypothetical examples, and now all of a sudden it's actually relevant to something in my life. So I do that. I do it also with Pandas Pans, especially when, we go through different situations, and I think, I think I need to brush up on this, because I know my own podcast has a lot of resources on Pandas Pans. I will go back and listen to different episodes that have experts on it. Of course, I'm not, listening really to myself. That's always kind of the downside, is sometimes I'm like, oh, wow, that doesn't sound great, but it's a way to connect with those experts. And then sometimes I'll even search some of those experts and listen to them on other podcasts as well, just so I can kind of hear, they might have said something else in talking to other people. And it's a great way to kind of branch out and listen to some other podcasts for sure, and get to really hear about a little bit of a different take on some of those experts. And so I highly recommend that. If there's somebody that you liked on my podcast, chances are they've been on another podcast, and you could probably find them. One that I did listen to was the Better Health Guy podcast, and there are a lot of health resource related podcasts that he does. It's all better health. And so he has done some Pandas Pans podcasts, and so that's a great one to try. The Mom and Doc Talk as well. I think that's what it's called, Mom and Doc Talk, with Jennifer Bear. I never get her name right. Is one as well, where she's focused on Pandas Pans. I've gotten into some different podcasts this year. I'm still working on my French language learning, so I've been trying more French podcasts, but not always as successful as I'd like to be. Dr. David Puder has a psychiatry and psychotherapy podcast, and there is one there on Pandas Pans as well. I listened to that this year. Also, it's funny. I used to do a lot more like motivational speaker podcasts. There were a lot of those like motivational Rachel Hollis type of podcasts, and I used to be into those a lot, and I've kind of gotten away from that. One that I do like is Terry Cole. She's had some really good podcasts, and she's really focused on boundaries and being kind to ourselves. And it's not motivational, but it's more psychotherapy related. There's also a new podcast called Pan's Panda Stories, and it is coming out of the UK. There are two women from the UK that are doing that one, and I've listened to a few of those episodes as well. I think I'm on episode 6. And they've got some different doctors, experts. They're talking about their own stories of their children with pandas, pans. So highly recommend that as well. Like there's just been a real explosion of resources this year. And so I think it's amazing. I've been listening to Good Inside with Dr. Becky Kennedy. That is a great one. It talks a lot about parenting, really helpful. And I love We Can Do Hard Things with Glennon Doyle and Abby and Glennon's sister. So good. And then two others. One is the Parenting Survival podcast. So it is focused on anxiety and OCD in children. And the woman is actually a therapist who works on OCD. I attended a webinar that she did a few weeks ago about getting to core fears in OCD. So I do recommend this podcast. It has really opened my eyes to how much bigger OCD is than I thought it was. So again, totally recommend if you do have somebody in your life that has OCD, listening to that podcast, because it'll start to help you to be able to at least even identify what things you're seeing are related to OCD and anxiety. And then the last one that I've been listening to that is kind of a funny one, actually. It's called Just Jack and Will. I loved the show Will and Grace. I have all of the seasons on DVD, and I loved it. And so it's a rewatch podcast with Eric McCormack and Sean Hayes, and it's called Just Jack and Will, and they go through all the episodes. So I've been watching the episodes again and listening to it, and so that one has just been like not about learning and just about fun. And I need both. Like I also listen to Smartless. Like it's another one of my, like, it's not about learning, it's just about fun. Because sometimes I'm, walking the dog and I can't put anything else in my brain. I need to just listen to something fun. Anyway, so that's a bit of a wrap in terms of the things I've been listening to this year, after going through all of the ones of my podcast that you guys have been listening to. So I do appreciate you so much for listening to this podcast and going through all of the sort of wonky changes in timing and the on and the off and the weekly to bi-weekly and everything this year. And I'm hoping to bring a little more consistency next year. But again, this is life, right? We just kind of do the best that we can. And I do appreciate you listening. If you do have ideas for things that you would love to hear on the podcast, either someone you'd like me to interview, something you'd like me to share about, happy to do that. You can contact me either through Instagram is easy. It's at Sarah Lady Gluten, SarahLadyGluten, or you can email me at reallifeprojectco@gmail.com, all as one word, reallifeprojectco. And I'd love to hear your ideas. It's always great, even if your idea is just like more on parenting, please, or if your idea is like more things related to boundaries and psychotherapy or whatever, right? Like there's so many experts out there that I can reach out to. Or if you're like, I just read a book by so-and-so and it seems cool. And you know what? They don't all say yes. I've had a few times where I've like shot really high and I, didn't get it, but it's pretty rare. Like honestly, a lot of people have said yes. And that's where I'm always just thrilled and amazed and delighted to get to speak with as many people as I do. So I hope that all of you have had a good 2023, I guess. I mean, I even cringe to say that, like a good 2023. Like, I know it's been what it's been. And so let's just call it, we're at the end of the year. Spend that time reflecting. I'm sure, like me, it's been a combination of, delightful things and challenging things and things that went better than expected. One of those for us is my son started grade 9, and it honestly went a lot better than I ever expected. He's enjoyed it more than I thought, and he's adjusted better. So sometimes those are wins too. And those are things that, we can reflect on. And then start to think about 2024 and what that means for you and what you're hoping to either work towards or not work on or take a break from or explore more or whatever it is that, your heart needs in 2024 and that you want to be thinking about. So enjoy the end of the year, and I look forward to connecting with you again in 2024. Thank you for listening to the Learning to Slay the Beast podcast. Please keep in mind, this podcast is not intended to be medical or professional advice. If you'd like to hear more from me, you can follow me on social media, Instagram and TikTok at Sarah Lady Gluten, or Facebook, Sarah_gluten-free lady. You can also visit my website, which includes author information, speaking information, and more info on the podcast at www.se-german.com. If you like the podcast, please feel free to review the podcast on your favorite platform and also subscribe, because it means that it will show up for you every week on your favorite podcast platform. Also, we've just started to have the ability to support the podcast. You can find this link in my Instagram bio or visit Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/learning to slay the beasts. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.